Aliens attack research station. Humans detonate their star. War Commander Scarthvel dragged one obsidian claw across the holographic display. His reptilian features twisted into what passed for a smile among the Qeth. The scaled ridges above his yellow eyes caught the sickly light emanating from the tactical readout, each ridge bearing ritual scars that marked his countless victories. Trophies lined the walls of the Bone Render's command chamber skulls from a dozen species, some still bearing fragments of the terror their owners felt in their final moments. "Pathetic," he hissed, his forked tongue tasting the recycled air for any trace of fear. There was none. His crew shared his contempt for the soft-skinned humans whose distress signal flickered weakly on their sensors. "Look at this intelligence report, my packmates. No claws, no natural armor. Their skin tears like wet paper." The assembled Qeth officers rumbled their approval, a sound like grinding stone. Each bore the ceremonial scarification of their rank, parallel cuts along their jaw lines that had been rubbed with metallic dust to create permanent silver streaks. Their uniforms were minimal, designed to showcase the muscular bulk beneath scaled hide that could turn most energy weapons. "What of their technology, War Commander?" asked Subpack leader Garth Kex, her own collection of fingerbone necklaces clicking as she leaned forward. "The reports suggest advanced metallurgy, quantum manipulation." "Compensation for weakness," Scarthvel's roar echoed through the chamber. "A species that cannot rip its enemies apart with tooth and claw must hide behind machines. We have conquered 47 worlds, Subpack leader. Each victory proved that flesh defeats metal, that the strong devour the weak." He gestured toward a particularly ornate skull mounted behind his command throne, the elongated cranium of a Volarian mathematician who had begged for mercy in 17 languages before Scarthvel personally removed his spine. The tactical display shifted, showing the human research station drifting in the Kepler Nebula's gossamer embrace. Heisenberg Research Station, according to their databases. Even the name reeked of academic weakness. "Their distress call mentioned stellar manipulation research," Garth Kex continued, her tone carefully neutral. "If they possess star-killing technology, then we possess it." Scarthvel's claws extended fully, each one honed to molecular sharpness. "After we harvest their soft flesh for the slave markets and crack their skulls for the delicious fear-soaked brains within." He had developed quite a taste for human neural tissue during their raids on the outer colonies. The meat carried an exquisite flavor of desperation. Dr. Lyra Blackthorne watched the Qeth fleet approach with the clinical detachment of a scientist observing bacterial growth in a petri dish. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, revealing the subtle scarring along her jawline, not ritual markings like the approaching aliens, but surgical scars from reconstructive work after her last military operation. The Qeth scanners would read her as a typical human female: delicate bone structure, soft skin, no visible weapons. They couldn't detect the quantum-hardened implants beneath that skin, or the way her seemingly gentle hands had once triggered the collapse of an entire enemy fleet. "Status report," she said, her voice carrying the kind of authority that made seasoned soldiers straighten their spines. Dr. Marcus Voidrite looked up from his console, fingers dancing across controls with the precision of someone who had spent years defusing antimatter bombs under hostile fire. His sandy hair and wire-rimmed glasses made him appear every inch the stereotypical physicist, but Lyra could see the telltale steadiness in his movements, the kind that came from having exactly 3.7 seconds to choose between the red wire and the blue wire, while enemy plasma burned through your cover. 15 Qeth vessels, he reported, his voice carrying just a hint of anticipation. Standard pack formation. They're running full sensor sweeps, cataloging our defenses. His smile was the sort that belonged on a child's face while pulling wings off insects. "Should I begin the welcome preparations?" "Not yet." Lyra turned to the woman hunched over the quantum engineering station. Dr. Sierra Nightfall's petite frame and ethereal features had once made enemy soldiers underestimate her during her special forces days. They learned their mistake when she started folding spacetime around their necks. Sira, how are our exotic matter reserves? Fully charged and ready for deployment. Nightfall's fingers traced complex patterns in the air, manipulating holographic displays that showed gravitational field equations most humans couldn't even pronounce. I've got enough juice to turn their boarding parties into quantum paste. Or we could get creative, maybe trap them in temporal loops, let them experience their deaths a few thousand times. The fourth member of their team looked up from his biological analysis station with the kind of smile that made serial killers seem well-adjusted. Dr. Kai Stormborn had been studying alien physiology for 5 years, and his research notes read like a torturer's manual. I've been analyzing their broadcast signatures, he said, his tone carrying the enthusiasm of a child discussing his favorite toys. Reptilian metabolism, calcium carbonate scales, redundant cardiovascular system. I have 17 different chemical compounds that should react quite interestingly with their cellular structure. Lyra nodded approvingly. Each of her team members maintained their cover as civilian researchers, but their personnel files, the real ones, buried under 17 layers of military classification, told a different story. They weren't here to study stars. They were here to learn how to kill them. The comm system crackled to life with her own voice, transmitted from the station's emergency broadcast array. She sounded terrified, desperate, exactly the kind of prey that would make Qeth mouths water with anticipation. Mayday, Mayday, this is Dr. Lyra Blackthorne aboard Heisenberg Research Station. We've suffered catastrophic system failures. Life support is failing, and our stellar manipulation array is showing dangerous instabilities. Please, if anyone receives this transmission, we need immediate evacuation. We're just scientists. We don't have military defenses. Our research into controlled stellar ignition is too important to lose. The theoretical applications for star-killing technology could revolutionize. The transmission cut off with the perfect amount of static to suggest system failure. Lyra had practiced that little performance for weeks, crafting each word to sound like desperate revelation rather than calculated bait. On the tactical display, the Qeth fleet surged forward with predatory eagerness. War Commander, did you hear that? Garth Kex's voice carried across the void, her excitement palpable even through quantum-encrypted communications. Star-killing technology, if we can capture these humans alive. The Dominion will control the ultimate weapon, Scarthvel completed, his own voice thick with greed. Prepare boarding pods. I want those soft skins taken alive. Their knowledge will make us gods. Lyra smiled, and her team exchanged glances that would have chilled the blood of anyone who knew their real mission parameters. The Qeth thought they were hunting prey. They had no idea they were flying straight into the maw of predators who had spent years learning how to weaponize the fundamental forces of the universe. Marcus, Lyra said quietly, initiate Reaper Protocol preliminary sequence. Voidright's fingers moved across his controls with loving precision. Deep within the station's core, machinery that had never appeared on any civilian manifest began to hum with barely contained power. The Stellar Manipulation Array, a device designed not for research, but for turning stars into controlled supernovas, started its initialization sequence. Sira, defensive systems online. Let's give our guests the full tour of human hospitality. Nightfall's console lit up like a Christmas tree as hidden weapon systems throughout the station came to life. Quantum field generators, exotic matter projectors, spatial distortion cannons, all disguised as research equipment until this moment. Kai, prep the biology lab. I have a feeling we're about to receive some new test subjects. Stormborn's laugh was the kind of sound that made small children have nightmares. I've been so looking forward to field testing my compounds on live specimens, for science, of course. The Qeth fleet continued its approach, assault pods launching like spores from a predatory fungus. In 30 minutes, They would breach the station's hull expecting to find cowering academics and advanced technology ripe for plunder. Instead, they would discover that humans didn't just study the universe, they weaponized it. The first Qeth assault pod punched through the station's outer hull with the subtlety of a meteor strike, sending shockwaves through the corridors that rattled equipment and set emergency lights flashing. Scarthvel's elite warriors poured through the breach like liquid death, their scales gleaming under the harsh illumination, claws extended and ready to rend soft human flesh. What they found instead was Dr. Marcus Voidrite standing calmly in the corridor, his hands resting on what appeared to be a standard research tablet. His wire-rimmed glasses reflected the emergency lighting as he smiled with the kind of professional satisfaction usually reserved for successful doctoral defenses. "Gentlemen," he said pleasantly, "welcome to Heisenberg Station. I hope you'll find our accommodations explosive." The lead Qeth warrior, a scarred veteran whose ritual markings covered half his skull, raised his plasma rifle with predatory glee. The soft skin was alone, unarmored, holding nothing more threatening than a computer tablet. This would be almost disappointing in its simplicity. Voidrite pressed a single control on his tablet. The corridor intersection behind the Qeth strike team disappeared in a controlled detonation that turned metal bulkheads into supersonic shrapnel. The shaped charges, disguised as atmospheric processors for the past 6 months, had been positioned with mathematical precision to create overlapping kill zones. Qeth scales, for all their natural armor, provided no protection against tungsten fragments traveling at 3,000 meters per second. The lead warrior spun around, plasma rifle forgotten, as his packmates were reduced to expanding clouds of metallic dust and organic vapor. His yellow eyes, evolved for tracking prey across desert wastelands, struggled to process the sudden transformation of his elite unit into abstract art painted across the walls in scales and ichor. "Fascinating," Voidrite murmured, making notes on his tablet as the surviving Qeth stumbled through the smoke and debris. Standard explosive fragmentation proves highly effective against reptilian dermal plating. "Marcus, my boy, you've outdone yourself." He was talking to himself, a habit developed during years of solo demolitions work where a single miscalculation meant becoming a brief, bright star against the void. The surviving warrior roared and charged, claws extended, every instinct screaming at him to close distance and gut this soft-skinned abomination. His powerful legs, built for leaping across rocky terrain in pursuit of fleeing prey, propelled him forward with lethal grace. Voidrite sidestepped with fluid precision and triggered another sequence on his tablet. The floor beneath the charging Qeth erupted upward, not an explosion this time, but a carefully calculated structural failure that created a spike of twisted metal, perfectly positioned to pierce the warrior's chest cavity. The alien impaled himself on the impromptu spear with enough force to drive the jagged metal through his back, scales parting like wet paper around the crude blade. "Momentum equals mass times velocity," Voidrite observed, watching the Qeth writhe on his improvised spear. "Elementary physics, though I must admit, your species' forward center of mass makes you remarkably predictable in close combat scenarios." 3 decks down, Dr. Sierra Nightfall was conducting her own welcoming ceremony for a second boarding party. The petite quantum engineer stood in what appeared to be a standard laboratory, surrounded by sophisticated equipment that hummed and sparkled with barely contained energies. To the Qeth warriors spreading through the chamber, she looked like exactly what their intelligence briefings had promised. A delicate human female, probably a graduate student, cowering behind her research apparatus. Subpack leader Garthkex personally led this assault team, her fingerbone necklaces clicking as she moved with predatory grace between the laboratory benches. Her yellow eyes fixed on Nightfall with the kind of hunger that had driven the Qeth expansion across 17 star systems. "Little meat," she purred, her forked tongue tasting the air for fear-scent. "Do not run. We require you functional for interrogation." Her claws extended with audible clicks as she imagined the delicious terror she would extract from this soft creature. Nightfall looked up from her console with the expression of someone mildly annoyed at being interrupted during important work. "Oh, hello. I was wondering when you'd show up." Her fingers continued moving across the holographic display, making minor adjustments to equations that describe the fundamental structure of space-time. "I've been so looking forward to testing my spatial distortion fields on live subjects." "Surrender meat, and your death will be." Nightfall pressed a single control. Reality hiccuped. The first Qeth warrior simply ceased to exist from the waist down, his upper torso falling to the floor with a wet thud while his legs remained standing exactly where they had been. The spatial distortion field had folded space around his midsection, creating a localized event horizon that had casually edited him out of causality. The second warrior tried to retreat, and discovered that retreat no longer existed as a concept. The quantum field generator behind him had created a localized time loop, trapping him in the exact moment he had decided to turn around. He experienced the realization that he was going to die approximately 6,000 times in the span of 3 seconds, each iteration layering fresh terror onto his consciousness, until his mind simply collapsed under the weight of temporal paradox. Qeth snarled and raised her plasma rifle, but found her arms moving through something that wasn't quite space and wasn't quite time. The exotic matter projector had surrounded her with a field of negative energy density, creating pockets of inverted physics where normal matter behaved according to rules that hadn't existed 5 minutes ago. "The fascinating thing about quantum mechanics," Nightfall continued conversationally, monitoring her readouts as the remaining Qeth warriors discovered that their weapons were firing backwards through time, "is that once you really understand the math, reality becomes remarkably flexible." She adjusted another control, and 2 more warriors found themselves occupying the same spatial coordinates, an impossibility that resolved itself by converting their overlapping mass into pure energy. The explosion painted the laboratory walls, with patterns that hurt to look at directly. Qeth was still struggling against the exotic matter field when Nightfall walked over with the casual air of a professor approaching a particularly interesting specimen. "Sub-Pack Leader, according to your rank insignia. Wonderful. I've been curious about Qeth command hierarchy neural patterns." "You cannot. This is impossible," Qeth managed, her voice distorted by the temporal fluctuations surrounding her. "Impossible is just another word for haven't done the math yet," Nightfall replied, producing what looked like a standard medical scanner. "Don't worry, this will only hurt until you die, then it will hurt quite a bit more." In his biology laboratory, Dr. Kai Stormborn was practically vibrating with scientific enthusiasm as he examined his first live Qeth specimen. The warrior was secured to a medical table by restraints that looked civilian, but had been designed to hold subjects during vivisection procedures. Various chemical compounds bubbled in beakers around the lab, each one a masterpiece of biochemical warfare tailored specifically for reptilian physiology. "Magnificent," Stormborn murmured, running a scanner along the Qeth's scaled hide. "Calcium carbonate matrix with organic polymer reinforcement. Natural armor that can deflect most energy weapons." He made notes on his tablet with the enthusiasm of a chef planning a new recipe. "But completely vulnerable to molecular dissolution agents. How delightfully ironic." The Qeth warrior struggled against his restraints, yellow eyes burning with rage and growing fear. "Release me, soft skin. The Dominion will." "The Dominion will be very interested in my research findings," Stormborn interrupted, selecting a syringe filled with clear liquid from his collection. "This particular compound is based on a modified human stomach acid, harmless to mammalian tissue, but it should react quite energetically with your particular cellular structure." He injected the contents into the warrior's arm with clinical precision. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The Qeth scales began to bubble and dissolve, revealing the muscle tissue beneath, which promptly began its own chemical breakdown. The warrior's roar of pain transformed into a gurgling scream as the acid worked its way through his cardiovascular system. "Fascinating," Stormborn observed, recording every detail as his subject liquefied from the inside out. "The reaction is even more violent than my calculations predicted. The calcium carbonate actually catalyzes the dissolution process." He was already reaching for another syringe, this one containing a different compound. "I wonder how your respiratory system will react to aerosolized neurotoxin." 2 more Qeth warriors had been brought to his lab by the automated defense systems, both unconscious from exposure to quantum field generators. Stormborn regarded them with the kind of anticipation usually reserved for Christmas morning. "Don't worry, gentlemen," he said, preparing additional syringes. "Your sacrifice will advance human knowledge immeasurably. We're going to learn so much about how to kill your entire species more efficiently." On the bridge of the Bone Render, War Commander Scarthvel watched his tactical display with growing horror as assault team after assault team simply disappeared. No retreat signals, no final transmissions, just the sudden absence where his warriors had been moments before. "War Commander," his communications officer reported, her voice tight with fear, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the research station. Whatever they're doing in there." "It's just scientists," Scarthvel roared, his claws gouging deep furrows in his command chair's armrests. "Soft-skinned academics with no natural weapons. How are they?" The tactical display lit up with a new contact. Something vast was awakening in the stellar core of the nearby star, gravitational waves rippling outward as the fusion process began to destabilize. Energy readings spiked beyond the sensor's ability to measure. Dr. Lyra Blackthorne's voice crackled across all Qeth frequencies, no longer carrying any pretense of fear or desperation. Now it held the cold satisfaction of a predator, revealing the trap that had already closed around its prey. "War Commander Scarthvel," she said, "allow me to properly introduce myself and my team. We're not researchers studying stellar manipulation. We're weapons developers who have successfully weaponized stars themselves. The device you see activating in our sun is called the Reaper Protocol. In approximately 18 minutes, this star will undergo controlled supernova, creating an explosion that will sterilize everything within a 50-light-year radius." Scarthvel's scaled hide went pale as the implications crashed over him like a tidal wave of liquid nitrogen. "Your boarding parties have provided excellent test data for our defensive systems," Blackthorne continued with clinical detachment. "Dr. Voidright's explosive arrangements have proven highly effective against Qeth physiology. Dr. Nightfall's quantum fields are performing beyond expectations, and Dr. Stormborn has gathered invaluable biological data that will help us design more efficient methods of eliminating your species." The star's output flickered, its steady nuclear fire beginning to stutter as alien mathematics rewrote the fundamental laws governing stellar fusion. Beautiful and terrifying auroras danced across its surface as gravitational waves propagated outward at the speed of light. "You have 17 minutes to contemplate the fact that you've encountered a species that doesn't just study the universe." Blackthorne's voice carried the finality of a judge pronouncing sentence. "We weaponize it." The star began to die, and with it, everything in the system that called itself Qeth. The star screamed. Not audibly, sound cannot propagate through vacuum, but across every spectrum of electromagnetic radiation, as the Reaper Protocol reached full activation. Dr. Lyra Blackthorne stood in the station's observation deck, watching through filtered viewports as stellar physics bent to human will. The fusion chains that had burned steadily for 4 billion years suddenly found themselves following new rules, mathematical imperatives written in exotic matter and quantum field fluctuations. "Magnificent," she breathed, her reflection ghost-like in the reinforced transparent aluminum. Behind her, displays showed readings that should have been impossible, gravitational waves propagating at frequencies that made spacetime itself ring like a struck bell, stellar matter accelerating beyond escape velocity as the star's own gravity well turned inside out. Dr. Marcus Voidright joined her at the viewport, his tablet displaying real-time analysis of the stellar collapse. "The resonance cascade is proceeding exactly as modeled," he reported with the satisfaction of an artist whose masterpiece was finally being unveiled. "Stellar core density has increased by 300%. We should see initial plasma ejection in approximately now." The star convulsed, hurling billion-ton masses of superheated matter into space with velocities that made conventional physics weep. Each ejection carried more energy than humanity's entire civilization had ever produced, and they were streaming outward in carefully calculated trajectories that would scour the Qeth fleet from existence. "How long until full supernova?" Blackthorne asked. 14 minutes, 37 seconds, Voidright replied, making minor adjustments to his calculations. "Though I suspect our reptilian friends won't survive that long, the initial plasma wave should reach them in approximately 6 minutes. On the Bone Renders Bridge, War Commander Scarthvel was discovering that predatory instincts evolved for terrestrial hunting provided no guidance for cosmic-scale warfare. His tactical displays showed the star's death throes with pitiless mathematical precision, radiation levels climbing beyond survivable limits, gravitational anomalies that would crush his ships long before the actual explosion reached them. "All ships emergency retreat," he commanded, his voice cracking with something his species had no cultural context for processing. "The Qeth did not flee. They conquered or they died, but they never ran from prey. Maximum velocity, scatter formation." "War Commander," his navigation officer reported, her scaled features pale with shock. "Our engines are not responding. Something is interfering with our drive systems." The main display shifted to show their external sensor feeds. Crackling fields of exotic energy surrounded each Qeth vessel, the same quantum distortions that had turned his boarding parties into abstract art installations. Dr. Nightfall's tractor beams, disguised as research equipment, had locked onto every ship in the fleet. "They're holding us in place," the officer continued unnecessarily. "We cannot escape the blast radius." Scarthvel's claws extended fully as he processed this information. His entire career had been built on the premise that superior strength and speed could overcome any technological advantage. He had personally torn apart enemy soldiers with his bare hands, had drunk the fear-scented blood of conquered species, had built his reputation on the simple truth that flesh was stronger than metal. These humans had just made his flesh irrelevant by learning to kill stars. In the station's core, the Reaper device hummed with barely contained cosmic forces. Dr. Sierra Nightfall monitored the quantum field generators that kept the stellar manipulation array stable, her fingers dancing across controls that regulated energies capable of cracking planets. The machinery around her was beautiful in its lethal complexity, crystalline matrices that focused gravitational waves, exotic matter conduits that channeled forces older than civilization, quantum processors that calculated the exact mathematical sequences needed to murder a star. "Stellar output has increased by 400%, she reported to the rest of the team. "The fusion process is entering runaway cascade. We're witnessing controlled stellar death on a timeline compressed from millions of years to minutes." Through the station's hull, she could feel the star's death song vibrations transmitted through solid matter as gravitational waves shook the very atoms of their structure. It was the universe's funeral dirge for a celestial body that had burned since before life crawled from Earth's primordial oceans. "Any word from our guests?" Blackthorne asked over the comm system. "Dr. Stormborn reports excellent progress with his biological samples," Nightfall replied. "Apparently, Qeth nervous systems respond quite dramatically to targeted neurotoxins. He's documented 17 different ways to kill their entire species using modified Earth bacteria. And Dr. Voidrite, currently calculating optimal placement for his next demonstration. He believes he can improve the explosive yield by 30% with better positioning of the shaped charges. The star pulsed again, its surface boiling away in continent-sized eruptions that painted the surrounding space in colors that had no names. Each eruption carried more energy than humanity's sun would produce in 1,000 years, and they were accelerating toward the trapped Qeth fleet with mathematical inevitability. Dr. Kai Stormborn was in his element, surrounded by the detritus of his biological experiments, and taking detailed notes on Qeth physiology. His laboratory looked like the workshop of a particularly creative serial killer, specimen tables stained with alien ichor, chemical analysis equipment running constant breakdowns of reptilian DNA, and detailed anatomical charts showing exactly where to place toxins for maximum psychological impact before death. Subject 7 shows remarkable resilience to cellular dissolution agents. He dictated to his recording system while examining a partially liquefied Qeth warrior. However, the addition of modified hemophilia compounds appears to prevent their natural clotting responses. Bleeding out takes approximately 14 minutes, during which they remain conscious and aware of their body's systematic failure. He turned to another table where a different specimen was secured, this one still very much alive and struggling against restraints that had been designed to hold subjects during procedures that Geneva Convention architects had never imagined. Subject 8 will help us test respiratory system vulnerabilities. Stormborn continued with the enthusiasm of a child describing his favorite toy. I've synthesized an aerosol compound based on Earth influenza virus, modified to target reptilian immune responses. The beautiful thing is that it won't kill them immediately. They'll have time to spread it throughout their population before the symptoms become fatal. The Qeth warrior hissed curses in his native language, yellow eyes burning with rage and growing terror, as he listened to his own death being planned with scientific precision. "Don't worry," Stormborn said reassuringly, preparing another syringe. "Your contribution to xenobiology will help ensure that humanity never again has to waste resources on prolonged warfare with your species. One aerosol deployment in your home system's atmosphere, and the entire Qeth population will be extinct within 6 months." Through the laboratory's viewports, the dying star painted everything in hellish light, as its surface began to slew away in preparation for the final collapse. War Commander Scarthvel stood on his bridge, watching death approach at the speed of light. The star's initial plasma wave was visible now, a wall of superheated matter that would vaporize his entire fleet in seconds. Behind it, building like a cosmic tsunami, came the main supernova shockwave that would scour this entire system clean of life. For the first time in his career, he felt something that Qeth culture had no word for. Despair mixed with existential terror at encountering a species that treated stellar bodies as disposable ammunition. "War Commander," his communications officer said quietly, "incoming transmission from the research station." Dr. Lyra Blackthorne's face appeared on the main display, her features calm and professional as she spoke from the station's bridge. Behind her, readouts tracked the approaching plasma wave with the precision of choreographed death. "War Commander, I wanted to ensure you understood the full implications of what you've witnessed here today," she said with the tone of a professor delivering a final lecture. "Your species operates under the assumption that physical strength determines survival. Claws, scales, predatory instincts, all evolutionary advantages in terrestrial warfare." The plasma wave grew brighter, its approach inevitable as mathematics itself. "However, you've encountered a species that has moved beyond evolutionary constraints into the realm of applied physics. We don't fight enemies, War Commander. We eliminate problems by rewriting the fundamental rules that govern reality." Scarthvel found his voice with tremendous effort. Your own people will condemn this. Genocide, mass murder. Blackthorne's smile was colder than interstellar vacuum. War Commander, my species doesn't consider this genocide. We consider it pest control on a cosmic scale. Your fleet threatened human interests. The appropriate response was to remove the threat along with any possibility of future threats from your region of space. She gestured toward something off-screen, and new information flooded the Qeth sensors. The supernova they were about to experience wasn't random. It was precisely calculated to destroy everything in a 50-light-year radius while leaving specific systems untouched. Worlds that had submitted to human authority. Colonies that provided useful resources. Species that had demonstrated appropriate deference to human expansion. This demonstration will be broadcast throughout the galaxy, Blackthorne continued. Every species that receives the recording will understand that human space is absolutely inviolate. Threaten our interests, and we will kill your star. Invade our territory, and we will sterilize your home system. Attack our people, and your entire species will watch their worlds burn. The plasma wave was seconds away now, its leading edge already beginning to interact with the outer hull of the first Qeth vessels. Your death serves a useful purpose, War Commander. You're helping us establish a new paradigm in galactic relations. A paradigm where annoying humanity carries consequences measured in stellar masses. The transmission ended, leaving Scarthvel alone with his fleet as the star's dying breath reached them at last. The explosion was beautiful in its completeness. 47 Qeth vessels, containing the Dominion's most elite warriors, simply ceased to exist in a flash of nuclear fire that briefly outshone the collapsing star itself. Their hulls, their weapons, their accumulated trophies from conquered worlds, all converted to elementary particles in the span between one heartbeat and the next. Dr. Lyra Blackthorne watched the Qeth fleet's destruction with professional satisfaction, making notes on her tablet about the plasma wave's effectiveness against various hull materials. The initial test had exceeded all expectations. Not a single enemy vessel had survived, and the exotic matter shields protecting their station had performed flawlessly. Stellar collapse proceeding as modeled, Voidrite reported from his station. Full supernova in 3 minutes, 20 seconds. Excellent. Begin broadcasting the demonstration recordings to all major galactic powers. I want every species council to receive high-definition footage of what happens when they threaten human interests. Nightfall looked up from her quantum field monitors. Should we include technical specifications? Some of the more scientifically advanced species might appreciate understanding exactly how we killed their star. Absolutely not, Blackthorne replied. Mystery is far more effective than technical knowledge. Let them wonder if we can do this to any star or just this one. Let them lose sleep calculating the energy requirements and failing to understand how we achieve them. The star reached final collapse, its core imploding beyond the event horizon of its own gravity, before rebounding in the most violent explosion the universe could produce. The supernova shockwave raced outward at a significant fraction of light speed, carrying enough energy to reignite dead worlds and strip atmospheres from anything in its path. Through it all, Heisenberg Research Station remained protected within its exotic matter bubble, its crew calmly documenting humanity's first successful test of stellar-scale weaponry. Begin preparation for our next assignment, Blackthorne announced to her team. Intelligence reports suggest the Vraxian hegemony has been expanding toward human space. I believe they're due for a demonstration of our stellar agriculture techniques. Dr. Stormborn looked up from his biological samples with the enthusiasm of a child on Christmas morning. Will we have time to gather more xenobiological data? I'm particularly interested in silicon-based life forms. I have some fascinating theories about crystalline structure dissolution. All the time you need, Kai. After today's broadcast, I suspect we'll have species lining up to surrender their territories rather than risk triggering a supernova response. The dying star's light painted the station's corridors in colors that hurt to perceive directly. The last rays of a celestial body that had burned for billions of years before humans learned to weaponize its death. The data transmission reached Earth's military command 18 hours after the supernova's light show painted the Kepler nebula in shades of cosmic violence. Admiral Helena Voss reviewed the complete operational report while sipping coffee that had grown cold during her third reading of Dr. Blackthorne's clinical summary of stellar weaponization. 47 enemy vessels eliminated with 0 human casualties, she murmured to herself, studying the tactical analysis. Complete biological data gathered on Qeth physiology, successful field test of the Reaper protocol, and a demonstration broadcast that should keep the local neighborhood quiet for the next few decades. Her aide, Commander Torres, shifted nervously in his chair. Admiral, the political implications of stellar-scale warfare are exactly what we intended, Voss interrupted, pulling up the intelligence reports that had been flooding in from across human space. Look at these intercepts. The Vraxian hegemony just recalled their entire expeditionary fleet from our border regions. The Crystalline Confederacy has sent formal apologies for any past misunderstandings and offered tribute. 3 separate species councils have requested immediate non-aggression pacts. She gestured toward the holographic display showing galactic political boundaries. Human space, previously a modest collection of systems on the galactic rim, was suddenly surrounded by vast buffer zones as alien civilizations relocated away from anything that might be interpreted as threatening. The Qeth Dominion, Torres asked, officially requesting immediate withdrawal from all systems within 100 light-years of human territory, Voss replied with satisfaction. Their remaining fleets are in full retreat. Apparently, watching your most elite strike force get vaporized by weaponized stellar collapse tends to adjust one's expansion priorities. Dr. Lyra Blackthorne stood in the conference room of Heisenberg Station, now officially designated as Mobile Stellar Research Platform Alpha 7, reviewing deployment orders for their next assignment. Her team had performed beyond expectations, proving that human ingenuity could transform any scientific principle into a weapons system, capable of eliminating threats on a cosmic scale. The Andromedans have been unusually quiet since our demonstration, she reported to the assembled team. Intelligence suggests they're reconsidering their planned invasion of the Perseus Arm colonies. Dr. Marcus Voidrite looked up from his demolitions calculations with an expression of mild disappointment. No immediate targets. I've been working on improvements to the stellar collapse timeline. I believe I can reduce ignition sequence from 18 minutes to under 12. Patience, Marcus. The psychological impact of our demonstration is still propagating through galactic communications networks. Every major power is currently recalculating the cost-benefit analysis of opposing human expansion. Dr. Sierra Nightfall adjusted her quantum field monitors, watching exotic energy patterns that painted impossible mathematics across her displays. I've been analyzing the gravitational wave propagation from our supernova. The resonance effects should be detectable for months, a constant reminder to anyone with appropriate sensors that humans can kill stars at will. Excellent. That persistent evidence will reinforce the message for species that might otherwise dismiss the recordings as propaganda. Dr. Kai Stormborn smiled with the expression of someone who had just received the perfect birthday present. I've completed my analysis of Qeth biological samples. Fascinating physiology. Their reptilian metabolism makes them remarkably vulnerable to engineered pathogens. I've designed 17 different biological agents that could eliminate their entire species within 6 months of deployment. Blackthorne nodded approvingly. Document everything. Command wants comprehensive files on elimination methods for every known hostile species. chemical, biological, nuclear, and stellar-scale options for each potential threat. She pulled up a new set of orders on the main display. Our next assignment involves the Titan Nebula system. Long-range sensors have detected unusual energy signatures that suggest advanced technology. We're to investigate, gather intelligence, and determine whether the local inhabitants represent a potential threat to human expansion. Voidrite immediately began calculating explosive yield requirements for various stellar masses. Standard reconnaissance approach. Fake distress signal. Apparent vulnerability. Let them reveal their capabilities while we prepare appropriate responses. Precisely. Though I want additional preparation time for this one. Intelligence reports suggest these aliens may be more technologically sophisticated than the Qeth. We should be ready to demonstrate the full range of human capabilities. Nightfall's fingers danced across her controls, already beginning preparation sequences for the quantum field generators. Should I design new exotic matter configurations? I have some interesting ideas about temporal displacement weapons that could make targets experience elapsed time at accelerated rates. Definitely. I want multiple options available. Conventional explosives, quantum field manipulation, stellar ignition, and any new innovations you can develop during transit time. Stormborn was practically vibrating with anticipation. New species means new biological samples. I've been developing some fascinating compound that should work on any silicon-based life forms we encounter. Plus, I've had some innovative ideas about psychological warfare using targeted pheromone manipulation. The orders specified a departure window within 72 hours, providing sufficient time to fully stock their mobile laboratory with the latest developments in cosmic-scale violence. Each team member would have access to equipment that treated the fundamental forces of physics as raw materials for increasingly creative methods of eliminating potential threats. Remember, Blackthorne concluded, our mission parameters extend beyond simple threat elimination. We're establishing humanity's reputation as a species that other civilizations approach with appropriate caution. Every demonstration, every test, every successful elimination of hostile forces reinforces the message that human space is absolutely inviolate. The transmission reached the Qeth homeworld 48 hours after the supernova's light painted their outer sensor stations in the colors of stellar death. High Predator Zarathvel, eldest sibling of the eliminated War Commander, watched the complete recording of his brother's final moments with the kind of cold fury that had driven Qeth expansion across 24 star systems. But beneath the fury lay something new in Qeth cultural experience. The recognition that they had encountered a species operating under completely different evolutionary assumptions. The humans killed a star, his tactical advisor reported unnecessarily. They transformed stellar matter into a controlled weapon. Our most elite strike force was eliminated not through superior combat prowess, but through applied physics that treats celestial bodies as ammunition. Zarathvel's claws carved deep furrows in his command throne's armrests as he processed the implications. The Qeth had built their empire on the simple principle that strength conquered weakness, that superior predators devoured inferior prey. They had never encountered a species that bypassed conventional warfare entirely by learning to weaponize the fundamental structure of reality. "What of our expansion fleets?" he asked. "Already in full withdrawal from human territory. Fleet Commander Sarthkax reports that approaching within 100 light-years of human space is now considered tantamount to species suicide." The recording played again, showing the moment when stellar collapse became inevitable and 47 irreplaceable warships simply ceased to exist in a flash of nuclear fire. No battle, no contest of strength versus strength, just the casual elimination of an entire strike force by beings who had learned to treat stars as disposable weapons. Orders, High Predator. Zarathvel stared at the frozen image of his brother's final transmission. The moment when Scarthvel realized that predatory instincts provided no defense against species that could kill solar systems. "Full withdrawal from human space," he said finally, "permanent retreat beyond their sphere of influence, and tribute, offer tribute to demonstrate our non-aggressive intentions." The words tasted like acid in his mouth. The Qeth did not retreat. They did not offer tribute. They conquered or they died fighting. But they had never before encountered prey that weaponized stars. Dr. Lyra Blackthorne received the Qeth tribute offer while reviewing stellar composition data for the Titan Nebula system. The message was tersely worded but unmistakable in its implications. The Dominion was formally requesting non-aggression status and offering significant resources in exchange for guaranteed security from human stellar manipulation technology. "Fascinating," she murmured, forwarding the communication to command along with her recommendation for acceptance. Tributary relationships were always preferable to genocide when the tribute provided useful resources. Her team was already preparing for departure, loading exotic matter reserves and calibrating quantum field generators for their next demonstration of human scientific superiority. The Titan Nebula system awaited their arrival, unaware that they were about to encounter beings who had elevated cosmic violence to an art form. Through the station's viewports, the expanding shockwave from their demonstrated supernova continued propagating outward, carrying its message across interstellar distances at the speed of light. Every species that detected those particular radiation signatures would understand that somewhere in the galaxy, humans had successfully murdered a star and used its death as a weapon. The psychological impact would propagate faster than the physical shockwave, carried by quantum communications networks that connected every major civilization. Fear, respect, and appropriate caution would spread through galactic political structures as alien leaders recalculated the cost of opposing human expansion. "Ready for departure," Dr. Blackthorne, Voidrite reported from the engineering section. "All stellar manipulation equipment functional and prepared for field deployment." "Excellent. Set course for Titan Nebula. Time to introduce another species to the reality of human scientific capabilities." The station's engines engaged, carrying its crew toward their next appointment with cosmic-scale demonstration of human ingenuity, applied to the fundamental problem of eliminating obstacles to species expansion. Behind them, the supernova's light continued spreading through space, carrying news of humanity's new approach to galactic diplomacy. Threatening human interests now carried consequences measured in stellar masses. The universe was learning to fear a species that had discovered how to weaponize stars themselves, and Dr. Lyra Blackthorne was perfectly satisfied with that arrangement. After all, appropriate fear was simply another word for respectful diplomatic relations. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more journeys. Share your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned for the next adventure.